Let's go, let's go, let's off to work we go. Do 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 do. My bangs actually look nice. I made sure to comb them out and kind of get around the sides. So yeah, they should look nice. I don't know how long I'll stream for tonight. Certainly not as long as I streamed yesterday. Because yesterday, all told, I was live for like 5 hours, and that was a lot. You are so late, bitch. I know. I know. That's why we can't go for long, because I need to reset my fucking sleep schedule again. I was doing so good for like 3 days, and then I fucked it up again. I'm so bad at this. Not at the YouTube thing. Well, I'm probably bad at that too. But I'm so bad at schedules and waking up at the appropriate time. I'm trying to get better though. What's up, Margot? What's up, Taylor? I know, I'm very late. Hey, Wardens. Greetings, commies. Yeah, hello. And we got Hope. Did you try not doing that? That's what I do sometimes. No, actually. I think we should deport Elon Musk to hell. I'm just ready for Elon Musk to ship his ass off to fucking Mars. I'm beginning to wonder. I'm beginning to get like what is it called? Like antsy. I don't know. I'm beginning to get antsy at the prospect of all these billionaires talking about how they're going to be sending themselves into space here soon, and they're going to be building space colonies and stuff like that. Well, if that's true, how much longer we gotta wait? I'm like, are they getting ready? One would hope. I ate too much Mexican food now. I kind of have reflux, full to the brim with cheese and beans. I took some omeprazole and a Tums specifically because I had a big old bowl full of chili with cheese. Woke up this morning, there was no chili. I'm beating Dorn, beating Dorn, beating Dorn, Dorn, Dorn. Woke up this morning, there was no chili. So I just ate fistfuls of cheese. I still think that song is my crowning achievement in terms of Brett Keane songs. Go away, you fruits. Bro, you're the one in my live chat. I didn't like look in the YouTube algorithm and select through a big Rolodex and be like, ooh, oh, there's a shit stirring moron. I gotta have that one, man. Yup. Go on with your bad self. You don't like the content? There's nobody keeping you here but you. Venezuela is the new Mars. No, I think the billionaires really do genuinely, on some level, think that they're going to be able to make it off the planet before things get ugly. But I think the billionaires are not often themselves all that smart, but they are usually smart enough to surround themselves with people who are. And I think the people who are advising the world's billionaires right now have let them know that things could get hairy pretty quickly if just a few missteps are taken, and it's seeming more and more likely that those missteps will be made every day. And so I think that they're developing contingency plans. Venezuela is just one of those, along with the bunkers in New Zealand and stuff like that. But yeah, I think ultimately, ideally, if we do not like eliminate the idea of a billionaire class and unite as a planet and as a proletariat and take this shit, Like, if we don't unite around that concept, then I think, yeah, eventually the billionaire class is going to do their utmost best to export themselves and a very small servant class out to some exoplanet. Commies just want to steal what others have built. You know, it's funny you say that because America is not a communist country. It's, in fact, a pretty capitalist country. And it's made most of its wealth over the last 100 years by taking over countries that have developed resources of their own and manipulating those resources to the U.S.'s own profit measures. Not only that, but as we learned the other day on my stream, the story of the founding of the Americas, as far as like a Western kind of colonial enterprise, that story is a story of colonial expansion through slavery and subjugation, and it was explicitly capitalist in nature. No caps. By the way, if you enjoy the stream, make sure you hit that like button. It does help quite a bit. Do you have a job? This is what I do. What the fuck am I looking at? The most interesting thing you're going to find at 3 a.m. on the Vertical Live. So, like, literally, hit that like button. Subscribe maybe if you want to. But, like, you're not going to find much better pickings than this late. Stop exposing them to your pervert bullshit. I'm literally just sitting here existing. We haven't even started talking about anything weighty yet. And you're sitting here calling me a perv. Do you ever think that maybe it's you? Do you ever look around at the giant pool of failed relationships and dead friendships and think maybe it's you? I'm just wondering. Are you part of the LGBTQ community? Are you a supporter? I can forgive you because you probably didn't see the title. Yeah, I'm a trans woman, so it would be pretty fucking strange if I was not a supporter of the LGBTQ community. Yeah, I support queer liberation. I support women's liberation as well. Are you an LGBT? What? No, I'm not a football player of any kind. I'm not a fucking athlete. I'm fat. Look at me. Do I really look like an athlete to you? This is cinching up somewhere. But anyway, so what do we want to talk about, y'all? I want to have an interesting conversation about something worth talking about, and that's going to require a little bit of selective bias on my part, I guess, when picking what comments I go with. But if you've got something interesting we can talk about, now's your chance to pitch it. And the best way to get me to read it is by sending a super chat, just so you know. I do read those as soon as I get them, usually. Let's talk about kink at Pride. Oh boy. Do we want to talk about kink at Pride? We can if you want to. It's a long and time honored discussion here on the left. I, for one, am all for kink at Pride, and I answer the concerns of people who worry about bringing their kids to Pride with, well, maybe you turn your kids away when the kink float comes by. maybe you don't take your kid to the kink section of a pride event. Seems like that would clear up most of the issues. There'll be a day when new people are put in prison. See, this is what, like, comments like that are what make it so funny to me whenever somebody comes in here and tries to claim that there's not a genocide going on against trans people, or at the very least, like, the lead up to a genocide going on against trans people. When people try to act like there's not even genocidal intentions out of people on the right. But all you have to do is look online, look at just my chat in a vacuum. Fuck everybody else's chat, but like you can look at them too. Even if you looked at mine alone, though, you would see that there is a shockingly more normalized, everyday kind of pattern of treating people like they are less than human because they've got a gender expression that doesn't line up with yours. Yeah, Pride events are well curated and sectioned off depending on the type of content that is to be expected in that particular part of the event. So if there's like kink shit going on, there's usually a section of the parade or a section of the event or whatever, the combination of the two, that is reserved for the kinksters and the people that want to experience that and interact with it. And a lot of times you're not allowed to bring your kids to that section, period. It's just like I don't think you would be allowed to bring your kids to Folsom Pride either. I don't know for sure, but I would have to imagine that that's probably not something they allow. No, I don't agree with the UK marches. What's going on in the UK right now are literally race riots being dressed up as patriotism and defense for a nation. What it really is just a loose band of brigands going about burning down their country for reasons that ultimately amount to a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology and psychology and a very racist understanding at that. So yeah, that's how I feel about the race riots going on, and well, the worst of it's going on in Belfast, but it's erupting all over the UK right now, and it's literally constituting a pogrom in the areas where it's worst. Okay, honest question. If what now? If the Irish held a vote to kick out all the current non citizens, would you support that? Should the nation be allowed to do that? Okay, so it's a complicated question. I'll give you that, right? Because in general, I'm a defender of a people's right to self determine and, like a democratic polity being able to come together. And if that democratic polity is based on, theoretically, like, egalitarian principles where like there are Irish citizens who are not white, like there are non like Irish ethnicity people who are Irish citizens. So I guess ultimately it's up to a democracy to determine how they do their um how they handle their immigration issues. But would I think that it was moral of them to want to do that? No. And I, would, with my limited little platform I have here on YouTube, I would hope that I'd be able to convince a few people to hopefully stand in solidarity with the immigrant community. Because just in general, I think that people deserve to have the right to move around. I don't think that there's anything about being born in a particular place that damns you to a certain personality or a certain tendency of violence or anything else. And all such notions appear to me xenophobic and racist in nature. Make sure you hit that like button if you're enjoying the stream, by the way. I appreciate it. I love the way you don't feed into the trolls. I use the trolls as kind of like the backboard on a basketball goal, you know. Apt metaphor given that the Knicks won tonight. But yeah, that's how I like to see it. I'm not feeding into them so much as I am using them as kind of like a backboard to get the right bounce off of every shot that I make for content. I don't know how to put it, but they're like a well from which I can draw ever clear water. Are you smoking crack? You've never seen crack being smoked if you think this is how you smoke crack. This is a fascinating human specimen. Thanks. But thank you for the $5. I forgot to say that when I was responding to your comment. I appreciate it. I feel like I'm smoking crack because I'm in here. Well, that's just because I've got a crackhead's personality, okay? But I've never smoked crack. Now, regular Coke, I like regular Coke. I've never smoked it. I've never freebased Coke, so I've never done crack. But Coke by itself, now that's a horse of a different color. But luckily for me, I pretty much have the crackhead personality even without the chemical intervention. If anything, this helps keep me more stable and less reactive, I guess you'd say. Do you support Therians / Ultrahumans? I really don't understand it, but I feel like I don't have anything against you guys either. Here's how I feel about it. Is there any scientific basis to back up the idea that there are human beings that, like, that there is some kind of, like, biological basis to people feeling that way? No, but does that mean it'll never be discovered in the future? No, not necessarily. And the human brain is an empathy machine, centrally. Evolution, despite all the people who talk about competition, right, and the evil nature of human beings, right, what you'll find is usually they're just trying to justify their own greed and ignorance, because the story of humanity is the story of a cooperative animal developing an empathy, basically an empathy machine with which to deal with everything else in the world, basically. And it's only through subversion of that empathy machine that human beings are brought to do such travesties as some of the things we talk about here on this channel. Given that, it's completely conceivable to me that there might be human beings that genuinely feel like they've got the soul of a raccoon or whatever. Now, I might not necessarily agree that there is such a thing as a soul, certainly not a soul for a raccoon, and I might think that it's kind of like a pseudoscientific idea, but ultimately, what the fuck do I get out of being mean to Therians? What the fuck would I ever get out of being judgy towards them? What the fuck do I get out of denying the validity of their experiences, for that matter? So basically, I don't know, harmless crazies. Maybe at some point they'll be vindicated. You know, for a long time, people felt that way about trans people. For a long time, people thought, trans people, that was most people's exposure to the idea. Insofar as they had any exposure, they would be like, oh, whatever, harmless crazies, I guess. But as we got more and more understanding, and that promulgated across more of society, now we understand that it's a deeply, like, biologically interwoven thing, that there's a real legitimate reason why you should treat people differently when they transition, to recognize that gender transition and everything. And who knows? Maybe at some point we will find out that if someone thinks they're a monkey, it's actually, or not, obviously everybody is a monkey, but, um, if somebody thinks that they're like a non human monkey and it makes them feel better to feel like, they're a fucking tarsier or whatever, like, who the fuck, why should I care? And if science ends up backing it up at some point, then hey, that's just what happens. I don't imagine that's going to happen, but it might conceivably at some point. Human mind is a complex thing. Like I said, it's mainly an empathy machine, so I don't know. Apes, not monkeys. Sorry for being pedantic. Technically, both. Monkeys are simply more basal apes. Well, how do you, I guess it's not the best way to put it, but, you know, the common lineage between monkeys and apes resembled a monkey more than it did an ape. Just like the common ancestor between monkeys and, um, like the, oh, what are they called? Fuck it, I don't remember what they're called, but the lower primates below them probably resembled one of those lower primates more than it did these more specialized animals. So technically, we are both monkeys and apes. Can we still listen to Grimes ethically? Bro, your ethics are not determined by the music you listen to. You can listen to fucking Gigi Allen ethically, okay? Listen, like, music is not what determines your ethics. Like, ultimately, your ethics are determined by two things: how you think about them and how you live them out. The human mind is not an empathy machine, even though it's capable of empathy. You're implying that the mind is a machine for empathy for everybody, in which it is not. I mean, I would argue that, like, my statement was correct in the sense that I was saying it. I'm not saying that empathy is the only thing the human brain does, nor am I saying that the human brain always produces empathy in every human being. But it's worth pointing out, since you're bringing it up, that when someone's brain is completely incapable of producing empathy, or having that emotional response or whatever, we identify those people as psychopaths and sociopaths. We consider them mentally ill, like, like, it's considered like defective to be that way, which suggests to me that, science considers it pretty important for the human brain to be able to empathize pretty deeply and to be able to create emotional expression on the basis of that empathy. Oh, how do you think ethics are determined? Not everybody has empathy for everybody. I didn't say they did. I said the human brain is an empathy machine. If that needs to be explained further, then let me try. The human brain is adapted for a lot of different behaviors. But when it comes to relating to other human beings, the most powerful drive in us, the most powerful motivator as far as like emotional drivers, is empathy. And that's what I mean when I say that that our brains are an empathy machine. As far as we know, human brains are the only minds that are capable of not just um, assisting another species for its own gain or for some kind of, not fully understood relationship, but for actively altruistic reasons. At this point, there are entire conservation departments across most of America's 50 states, for example, that are dedicated expressly to the mission of manipulating environments with a human hand in a positive way to ensure that we undo the worst effects of our previous damage and to ensure that further development doesn't encroach in a negative way. This is ultimately because we have pretty much always felt a sort of kinship with all of the other animals that we share this planet with. Well, not maybe all the other animals that we share the planet with, but most of the other animals we share the planet with, we have varying degrees of empathy towards. Even animals that we eat, most of us find them very cute when living and seeing them in person. Um, you know, like uh, when it comes to human relationships, empathy is a profound driver. When it comes to understanding, for example, if you're standing in a grocery store line and somebody is, telling you their life story or whatever, a big part of the reason why you don't just cut them off and say, hey, I got better shit to do than listen to your fucking stupid ass story, is because you have empathy for them. You want someone to listen to you like that someday. And you hope that by being so gracious in this moment, that maybe that will come back to you at some point in the future. But ultimately, that logic isn't really going through your head. What's really happening is a profound pang of what you can only term empathy. The profound sense that you are, in a way, similar to that person in ways inextricable, that you want the same things that they do, and that that there are so many things in common between you. Human relationships, if it wasn't for preference or law, we would be killing each other all the goddamn time. In fact, we actually do. It's called crime. Crime has gone massively down since the 90s. You know that? Fuck. Anyway, so number one, if human beings would just be killing each other if it weren't for law or preference, then we never would have made it this far. There were literally like 6 to 8 million years of human evolution that happened before we reached the state that we would call identifiably modern in any sense. Like, if you identify that stage with the birth of agriculture, it's postulated that that happened between 12 and 16,000 years ago, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but as far as I know, we've got, excuse me, evidence of agriculture from about that far back. And then there is like 6 to 8 million years of evolution. Fuck, I'm gassy. Before that, that happened where human beings were not subject to laws of any kind. We're not subject to large civilization scale preferences. Oh, You're really smart, Phoebe. A high-functioning intellect. Nah, don't be jealous of me. I'm not really that smart. Listen, the main thing that makes me appear smart is that I've got a pretty good command of the English language, and I'm able to talk pretty quickly. I'm able to talk circles around these dumbasses in chat. And I am well-read, right? I graduated high school and everything. I have a few college credits under my belt, but I didn't get a degree or anything like that. Well, other than my high school degree. But the main reason why I appear smart is because I have continued to read into adulthood, and that is the fucking biggest thing I can tell any of you guys, because it does not take that much to sound like me or smarter, you know? And it's a skill you can practice, it's something you can learn, and in an era that is increasingly shifting towards content creators and influencers and shit like that as a career prospect, it's worth looking into. Like 10 years ago, people would always tell you not to go into YouTube or something like that because the market's oversaturated already and there's just not enough demand. But nowadays, the fucking whole script is flipped. There's more demand for this kind of thing than ever. And whenever somebody says something like that, they're jealous or whatever, I just want to give them this little speech and let them know you can do this. Probably. Maybe not, but probably. It's something you would have to learn how to do. You would have to religiously watch people who do it and figure out how they do it and try and bring some of that energy while instilling your own creativity into the process. But it is something people can learn how to do. You don't have to be born into this. I was born on a fucking passed down generational fucking 2 acre shit fucking farmstead in Mississippi. Okay? I fucking grew up. My parents had a small business that made shit for money. The best year we ever had, I think we cleared like 12 grand that year. Most years we ran between 6 to 8 grand, and the only reason we were able to live so fucking cheap was because we didn't owe a mortgage or any rent on this land. Because, like I said, it was being fucking passed down the generations. You know, the great great grand uncle or whatever that bought it back in the day bought it in like the 1930s for fucking a song, basically. And we were fortunate enough to be I guess just a part of a lineage that had that had access to something like that. And if it hadn't been for that, I don't know what kind of fucking fucked up poverty I would have lived in otherwise. But if my early years, as fucked up as they were, given how little we made, are any indication, I mean, it's just fucking crazy to think the type of shit that I went through in my childhood, right? And like, if I can come from that and figure this out, I want other people to be able to understand that they can do that too. And especially those of you who are critical thinkers and who are willing to challenge the rising tide of fascism here in the United States, the rising tide of Christian nationalism. Oh my God, you guys need to get online, start making content, start talking about this shit. I mean, you clearly don't know anything more than I do about the facts of reality, Creamy, because you're going around perpetuating this, like, human savage trope. I don't know what else to call it. But what you are doing is pseudoscience, and it is not supported by the literature. The story of humanity is a story of cooperation. Sometimes there's competition in the midst of that cooperation, but the story of humanity is a story of cooperation. You are a male, by the way. Do you think that trans women, when we transition, do you think that we, like, are under the impression that we go to sleep the night we transition and then we wake up the next morning without a penis? Is that how you think that we think this works? What's up, Impervious? Why does that name sound familiar? Impervious. Why does that fucking name sound so familiar? School should be free, ice cold take. Shouldn't school be free? Story of the manatee? What? They joined up last night? Oh, no, okay. Cool, 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 cool. Well, we're definitely going to turn on members only here in a minute. Here in about 25 minutes. Humans would be savages if it wasn't for the law and so-called laws created by religion, and you want to talk about cooperation, which would be overlapping personal preference agreed upon. No, that is not how it works. Cooperation is the natural state of human beings. You put 10... Lord of the Flies is not an accurate depiction of how human beings act, okay? It's an accurate depiction of how 12-year-old boys act when stranded on an island together, not how human beings in general behave, okay? So you put 10 human beings together on in some kind of like situation, and there's no like influencing factors making them fight. 9 times out of 10, that group is going to come together, put their fucking heads together, work through any language barriers they have, and figure out how to make themselves stronger as a whole. It is one of the most natural instincts to us, and the fact that you feel so passionately about defending the idea that it's not some universal thing means that you are probably like that exception that proves the rule that doesn't feel empathy or that doesn't feel the urge towards cooperation. But that makes you an outlier, not like representative of the average. I'm sorry. Imagine how 420 in your username and then talking about someone using drugs. I know. People are so fucking retarded. It's like they don't think that we can see. Like, I don't know. I don't. I flatly don't get it. Chugging pill bottles? You got me. Cooperation will be a preference upon each other in a tribal state, and a tribal state is national. You want to say it's how 12-year-old boys act? Yes. It's how it used to be? No, that's not how it used to be. If that's how it used to be, then how did we make it so far? If we would all just kill each other without laws, then how did we make it so far without laws? Oh shit. Okay, Creamy, let me ask you this. Can you feel empathy for a dog? Let me ask you this, Creamy. Let me put it this way. When those touchy-feely ASPCA commercials come on, how do you react? Yeah, no, that's how I feel too, Dirty Dan. Yeah, it sucks, dude. But it's how it is for an increasingly large number of people. That's why I make the membership so cheap, is so that people can ideally afford it, and so that's pretty cheap to give away as well. I'm not trying to argue. I'm just trying to have an understanding. It seems like you're just trying to argue. I mean, not really. I don't know. I don't feel like I was particularly argumentative in the way I asked that question. I can feel empathy for all those trans puppy girls. Me too. Are you really a good ally if you can't? Do you not understand what a tribal state means? Do you not understand what it means to be in a tribe? Yes, I do. I also find it interesting that you were just accusing me of just wanting to argue, and now you're claiming, oh, I'm just trying to have a better understanding. But now you're coming at me all passive aggressive and shit. Uh, naughty, naughty. I don't have a problem with it, but you're the one who's making conduct, you're the one who's making conduct a pillar of your argument. So, just wanted to point that out. That being said, I feel like my question still remains unanswered. When one of those commercials comes on, how do you react? Yes, I can feel empathy for my pet that is a dog. What about the that's why I asked you about the ASPCA commercial, right? Because that takes it out of the realm of it being your pet and makes it the hypothetical dog. Makes it the theoretical dog. The dog that exists out there somewhere, maybe. Schrodinger's dog, if you will. What's up, Josiah? By the way, Josiah, I will not be needing that graphics card, knock on wood, because I realized I would have to be very specific and constrictive about what I do to upgrade it. So I wanted to make absolutely sure that I got the right graphics card and the right power supply and the right fucking set of RAM and everything. And I got the PC upgraded and it does fucking great. I streamed GTA 5 live yesterday online and it held up great. So, I appreciate it though, and I wanted to let you know about that. I feel sorry for the dog. I had to go through that because that's a dog, which is completely different from any other animal in my opinion. Oh, interesting. So what about a cow? If you see an emaciated cow in a field as you drive by, do you have a pang of guilt for that cow? Is there a part of you that wishes you had a cattle trailer and could just rattle you up some cattle? I think you should enable your viewers to gift memberships on the live stream, not seeing the option. They should be able to. Let me look. They certainly should be able to. Let me look at let me check my stream health. Yeah, I mean it shows me the option. Try closing your app and reopening it, because it did give me the option. Now you're saying I'm passive aggressive for asking a question? Well, it was the way you worded it, right? Do you not understand? That's like universally recognized as coming out of your mouth, sideways. Like it's coming at it's coming sideways at somebody. It's passive aggressive. It's sus. I don't know what term you want me to use, but it's not, like nobody says that. Like, nobody says a question like that unless they're trying to be a dick, Just in my experience. But you notice how I'm smiling and I'm chill about it and I'm not like all that, like I'm not tripping, That should be a sign that it's not that big a deal and we should just move on and you should fucking get to the bottom of my understanding with you. Which is that if you feel empathy for other people, not people in your family, not people in your life, but like, let me ask you this, Creamy. What do you, and please be honest with me, if it's mean and judgmental, then say that. What do you think when you see a homeless person on the side of the road begging for change? Please be honest with me. Well, I apologize for how I worded it. I am a dick, but you only answered without actually explaining what it was, though. Well, what was the question? Fuck, god damn it, iPhone. Stop doing that. Quit it. Sorry, I'm not yelling at you, I'm yelling at my phone. What was it? So yeah, you asked what a tribal state is. Yeah, so it's kind of a vague term, I guess, but a tribal state would be a state within without like a overarching civilization, wherein there are established cities and farmlands and agriculture and stuff like that. It is a state before that or without that, because there are tribal communities to this day that are uncontacted and live lives that are functionally more similar to very, very, very early agrarians or hunter gatherers. Like that still exists to this day. They didn't all go away. Um, so that's what I would say a tribal state is. A way of life not characterized by the development of large scale civilization, but still very much capable of cooperation, sometimes at a very large scale, but without the hallmarks of like organized civilization. I could care less about the homeless person on the side of the road begging for change, because that is not me or anybody that I love. That is not my responsibility. Oof. So I think we just confirmed my theory, right? You are the exact type of person I was talking about when I said that there are some exceptions that prove the rule. People who don't feel empathy for other human beings, who only feel empathy for people within very specific relationship dynamics, right? You are that person. But most people don't think like you, I'm sorry to say. Or actually, I'm quite happy to say it. Most people aren't like you. Most people think, oh, that's too bad. Damn, that sucks. Or, fuck, I got 20 bucks. I'll give him 20 bucks. Or, oh shit, I got a bum bag. Let me give her this bum bag. Let me grab it. Most people, right? They see somebody in that position of vulnerability, in that position of ultimate vulnerability and poverty, and their response is to want to help, or to at least have a pang of common human empathy that says, that sucks that they're in that position, and it sucks that we have a society that allows them to be such. You are the one that is in error. Why you wear what your mama wear? My mom wouldn't wear something like this. My mom is like a 70s, like, fucking, I don't know, she's into like that garish shit that people wore back in the 70s. I think it's cool looking and awesome, but whatever. She's into like that vintage clothes kind of shit. I am into like, gothy, punky, kind of edgy shit. So, two very different styles. Although, you know what, she has started to incorporate a few hot topic trips into her fashion assemblage. So maybe eventually I'll get me and my mom a matching outfit or something. Hey, thank you, Dirty Dan, for the $1. Dirty Dan, dollar, dollar, dollar. $1, $2. Can we get $2? Dude, my dad used to be an auctioneer, and when I was a little kid, I always wanted to learn auction chant. I no longer want to because it's a pretty useless skill unless you want to have like a career in that, and I definitely don't. But I wish he could still do it because he's told me that he can't do it ever since he had a stroke a few years back. But I wish that he still could because it'd be fun to have him do a demonstration for you guys. I don't want these people to die, and it does suck. What does it mean I care about the situation that they're in because it's not my responsibility? You should still care because ultimately you bear some responsibility and that you participate in the society that helps make them, or like that helps perpetuate the possibility of that kind of poverty. And the bare minimum responsibility of a person that is benefiting from that society is to help work to ameliorate the like the ill effects of the worst excesses of capitalism, like volunteering at a soup kitchen, doing advocacy, doing protests whenever there's one that you can fucking attend, having conversations with people to try and fucking like there's just like a baseline set of responsibilities that I think a fucking human being has in a society that is depraved to some of its most vulnerable people, in order to kind of ameliorate the fucking ill effects that are caused by the pursuit of that luxury that we all benefit from. I think it's like the bare minimum moral obligation. I mean, like, that's the thing though. I feel like only a person with a defective empathy center would answer that question the way you did. Like, okay, hey, Taylor, I just saw your comment go by. How do you feel when you see um, a homeless person begging for change on the side of the road? Okay, no, Creamy, you don't get it. There's a reason why I asked Taylor specifically. There's plenty of people from my community in here, and most of them, I believe, feel empathy perfectly fine. But Taylor, I know, is not just empathetic but passionate about her belief in empathy and I don't know, the human spirit, I guess. I don't really know how to put it. She's kind of an optimist like that. I don't know how to put it gracefully, but yeah. I feel bad, especially because I know how many of our homeless are veterans. Exactly, 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 exactly. That is the response of someone who really fucking cares. That is the response of somebody who genuinely has empathy for the homeless. Creamy, humanity isn't as negative as you think. Yeah. Humanity isn't as negative as they are, and humanity is not as negative as they think either. Grinds my gears too, because people like this are what we're really competing against. Because I feel like this is how a lot of billionaires think about things. You know, I'm not saying you're a bad person or whatever. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to villainize you. I'm just saying like ultimately, I feel like I am in a battle against a very small cadre of the human population that, because of their lack of regard for other human beings, for the world at large, etc., they allow themselves or propel themselves on a course that sets them against the interests of humanity at large. For some people, it only goes as far as advocating for the wrong things. But for people who end up getting into the corporate world and eventually rising to the status of billionaire, it can be disastrous. Okay, so I'm gonna read Nanbot's comment, because this is one of the rare opportunities for me and Nanbot to disagree, I guess. Um, Shit, Prism, don't do that. So, I'm sorry to take the shitty side on this one, but as a bus driver, I usually am familiar with the person panhandling, and like 9 times out of 10, the person panhandling is not one of the folks genuinely trying to improve their situation. So, I've got a few critiques of this position. Number one, um, I think you're a bus driver up in Seattle area, right? Somewhere around that area, like Washington State, something like that. West Coast, I think, because that has a lot to do with it. But I guess I can make the critiques more broadly anyway. America's homeless problem is a complex mix of mental health issues, people who genuinely can't afford to live, basically, anymore, in any of the ways that people used to be able to get by, and people that just aren't wired for living traditionally. And there's basically no room for that last group in our society. The second group could be ameliorated completely by better economic policies. Like, you could do away with that section of homeless people literally just by providing like good low income housing and requiring employers to be more lax about address requirements and stuff like that, or setting up systems by which it's easier for homeless people to get their mail and stuff. Like, there's things you could do to like economically make it easier for people to get on their feet that would make it a lot harder for someone to fall to that level to begin with. Um, so, like, there's no place in our society right now for that third group, and I'm not saying that's right. I think it's a huge fucking failing in the society that there's effectively no place for that third group. But that third group, the closest to a place for that third group is on the West Coast, right? And so everybody that is homeless, that is just not wired for getting on their feet and living traditionally, ends up on the West Coast. Um, and that, I think, plays really heavily into people's perceptions of homeless people. That, like, when it comes to house people that live on the West Coast. Let me see here. I'm not saying we shouldn't help people. I'm just a proponent of funding services to provide people real help instead of blindly handing people cash. Also, I'm from a mid-sized college town, Kansas. Um, yeah, but I thought you lived up in fucking, up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not talking about where you're from. I'm talking about where you know, have had this experience with homeless people. But maybe I'm wrong. I definitely get people's details mixed up from time to time. Yeah, see, Creamy, like, the cruelty of your mindset is demonstrated by how you talk about it. Most homeless people did not put themselves in that situation. Not in any way that, like, should follow them for the rest of their lives. Like, ultimately, yeah, like, people do make shitty decisions and shit. And, you know, there's something to be said for personal responsibility. But time and science has shown that it is better to provide people with options for treatment, rehabilitation, and a genuine fucking path to a normal life than it is to demonize them. As far as Nambot, I read your comment about not giving them cash. As far as not giving homeless people cash, I mean, that I think is up to any individual person. Personally, you know, if I see somebody on the side of the road and they're not being violent or like visibly horribly strung out, like if somebody looks like they're about to die from their addiction, I'm definitely not going to help fund that last hit. No. No thanks. But if somebody looks like they're just fucking on hard times and need a little fucking money to get by or whatever, dude, I've got a fucking, you know, like, I've got a nicotine addiction. I've definitely spent some of the money I've earned busking when I lived on the road in furtherance of that nicotine addiction, you know. And, I'm grateful for every dollar that I ever made when I lived that way. Um, And ultimately, if I hadn't made that money, not only would I not have been able to buy cigarettes, but I wouldn't have been able to buy gas to get myself around, would have been able to buy food to keep myself alive, and water, and shit. And, you know, I don't know. Who knows? If that had dried up, if my ability to pay my way with my guitar and my voice had dried up at some point, and busking just stopped making any money at all. I mean, there were times when that basically happened, and where I had to live very fucking frugally for like 2 or 3 fucking weeks in order to scrounge up enough money from, you know, the little bit I was making every day to be able to finally afford to get the fuck out of there and get somewhere to greener territory. And I just think it's up to, you know, an individual person and how they feel and what their means are as to whether or not they should donate to a homeless person. I think it should be a case by case basis. Becoming homeless is rarely a choice, but from my experience, the people who are both able and determined to help their situation don't remain homeless for more than a few months. Well, what do you make of this, Nambot? And because I never hear anybody else making this argument, what do you make of the idea that there are just some people who are not so wired as to live in modern society as it is structured? Who maybe just need to be given like a fucking somewhat regulated, sectioned off fucking little fucking series of vacant lots somewhere, you know, where like fucking get the problem out from under the fucking underpasses and the fucking sidewalks and shit. I don't know, man. I don't fucking know. I just think that there's like a clear problem here that does not seem to get abated by providing people with resources, and part of that, I think, is because some people are not so wired as to live according to, you know, the society that we live in's fucking mores. Like, I don't know. I'll be real. I feel like if I had not, like, I genuinely think that if I had not um, had a kid and then ended up making this YouTube channel work and everything, there's a good chance that I might have ended up back on the road and homeless again, functionally. And there's a good chance that I might just have stayed that way. And I still think about the idea of, if I'm never able to do the silly little commune that I talk about sometimes as my retirement plan, well, maybe the kiddo gets old enough and then I have this RV that I've been maintaining and fixing up and making better and everything, and I take it out on the road and live that way, but now I'm living better because I set myself up some kind of little retirement plan or whatever. I don't know. I think there are some people who are not so wired to live in broader society. In like the 9 to 5 uniform and drug tests kind of environment. 100% there are some people who just operate that way. Well, yeah, and I just don't know. Having been homeless myself and having been a part of a community of homeless people who did not, in most cases, I guess, choose to be homeless, but were nevertheless kind of embracing it and embracing it as kind of like a lifestyle. I've just met people who are kind of like aware and cognizant of the fact that they couldn't really make regular society work for them. And I feel for those people so immensely. And sometimes I wonder if I'm one of them, To get to the liquor store when it opens at 9 a.m., then party at the bus station all day. Do what now? Similarly, there are some people whose various affectations genuinely prevent them from helping themselves. I just see a lot of people who are like roadie, but instead of being cool, they just want to get to the liquor store when it opens at 9 a.m., then party at the bus station all day. Yeah, not good. Not good. You can't permit that behavior, but at the same time, it feels kind of cruel to enforce against it. This is the real paradox of tolerance, folks. um, fuck. See, because here's the thing. Part of the dirty kid ethos, right, is, um, make good trouble when you can, but don't be a nuisance. And that's not, like you can't, it's really not, you know, it's like inconveniencing other people and, probably like not exactly the most healthy thing for society. But it's like, what do? Do you like fucking kick them out and say like, oh, you have to go party under the underpass now? Fucking swim with the fishies, bitches. Do you take a Do you take an abandoned building downtown and strip it down to safe elements and be like, all right, party in here, bums? Oh, shit. Bus station parties the lit as fuck. Well, that's what I'm saying, Mr. G. But I'm trying to play nice for the housey, okay? Some are good, some are bad, some are sane, some are crazy, some do drugs, and some don't. Well, yeah. Almost like they're fucking people. Almost like, huh? I'm constantly balancing my frustration and jadedness with my active rationality. I feel that. I get you. Hey, I get you. I get you about on that about things that I wouldn't even want to talk about because I understand. Like the rational part of me understands that it's just an emotional reaction. Prevention isn't addressed, it's management, which is the inhumane part of the process. American society needs more pathways for rehabilitation. Yeah, American society needs more pathways for rehabilitation, and we need universal health care. Here's the thing, Nambot, and this is one, something we can tie it back to a policy we both agree on. Um, like, so much of helping people get back on the path to recovery could be achieved by a universal healthcare system wherein the burden of healthcare is taken completely off of individual people and doing their own paperwork and shit, and it's taken off of like businesses and just put on everybody equally through taxes. If we had a universal healthcare system like that, it would be a lot easier for people to go through the kind of long-term inpatient care that they sometimes need to get off whatever drugs keep them from being able to meaningfully make it in regular society. Because ultimately, like, there's some addictions that you can have, and I genuinely think like you can be an alcoholic, for example, and as long as you're not fucking pickled, I think you can probably work a job and be just fine. As long as you aren't drinking and driving, as long as you aren't one of these people who needs to drink all day long, like, you can be an alcoholic and work a job lots of years. I fucking ask me how I know. A loved one of mine did it. Well, I can talk about it because she talked about it on stream. My mom did it for years. My mom was a functioning alcoholic. She'd get drunk as shit pretty much every night after work, and then wake up in the morning and go to work and come home and do it all again. And fucking wake up again, do it all again the next day, basically. Um, and I've been smoking weed pretty regularly, pretty much all day for the last 6 years. Most of the jobs I've worked through that time, I smoked weed when I had those jobs, and it didn't impair me or prevent me from doing the jobs or anything. Um, for some things, I think it doesn't matter, caffeine, right? But for some things, it definitely matters. Meth is often cited as a productivity drug, but taken in excess, it actually just tends to make people very irritable and talk fast and shit. And that's not necessarily a great trait to have in a coworker. Sometimes their productivity can make up for it, sometimes it doesn't, and that's when they get fired, right? But meth is usually not one of the ones that gets people fired, but that one's pernicious because of how it changes your personality and your body. Don't fuck around with meth. Do not fuck around with meth ever. But heroin, fent, any of these like downer kind of pills, anything like that's an what is it called, an opiate or an opioid, and like that type of shit is one of the things that will fuck people up because they will start using it sometimes a lot of times people start using it because they want to be able to work harder, or they want to be able to get through the pain of their workday or whatever. But it starts actually affecting their ability to work after a long enough time, or if they let it get out of hand because of some event in their life or something like that, they end up, sleeping in and not like no calling, no showing, or something like that. And if you're on a drug like that, that makes it to where it's very difficult for you to maintain a job or anything like that, getting off of that and um, finding a way to live life without that particular addiction can be such a fundamental part to like recovering from homelessness in general. And universal healthcare would go a long way towards providing everyone always with, a direct path towards that. One issue I ran into with the family is that we don't provide mental health services against people's will anymore. Not that it is an horrific thing, but my cousin died of liver failure because his liver failure had him in a psychosis from ammonia buildup, and refused to medicate himself. Alcoholism, by the way, but yeah, he wouldn't medicate for his psychosis. His psychotic state made him refuse to take other meds that would have saved his life. Damn, dude. Yeah, that type of shit genuinely makes me sad. And I do think that there needs to be more active intervention available to people who are like an active and present danger to themselves. Like, I don't know. Like, at what point are you. Like, I don't know, dude. It's fucked up. I don't want to step on people's personal autonomy. But what does freedom mean if the freedom you're protecting is for someone to pickle themselves with liquor over 40 years? Seems like a pretty cheap freedom to me. Some freedom. I got the right to sit here and pickle myself if I want to. Oh yeah, I guess you stubborn old chud, I guess you do, but fuck, man. The empathetic part of me, drawing it all back to empathy, wants to rip that motherfucker from his lazy boy and force him into a fucking rehabilitation program. It's like a balancing act between human rights and human life. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It really is. But yeah, Nambot, one thing I do want to say, I brought it up kind of earlier, but I didn't go into it much. One thing you have to keep in mind if you're um, if you're operating out west, or if you're operating in a big city or anything like that, one of those two. If you're operating in a big city or out west, you are going to deal with more homeless people than any like small town bus driver would ever have to. Because like, and I mean like small town, like 20,000 people or less. You're just not gonna have to deal with that many in a smaller area, and there's lots of people who rarely ever see a homeless person, and I think that the way America is set up and the way homeless services are distributed in America kind of like, it leads to further hatred against homeless people, actually. U.S. hate for socialism is a psyop. No world power has ever implemented socialism. Socialist adjacent ideological countries like China still have a dictator. So, yep. Socialist hate in America is literally just a psyop. It's just a fucking CIA psyop to keep business fucking running good in America. Then perhaps the social programs they espouse would exist. I was reading some of your earlier comments talking about how, if idealists could just combine that with an actual understanding of how to change things in the real world, we could get a lot done. Yeah, well, I like to think idealists have done quite a bit in this world. Oh. Oh yeah, not even even my little town is bad enough. Not quite 100,000 people, but we're between Topeka and Kansas City, so a lot of the homeless population come here because the rest of Kansas is, well, Kansas. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And almost 100,000 people is what I would consider a pretty large city. I know for a lot of people that's considered like a small town, but you gotta understand, I grew up in one town that was like, I don't know, 4,000 people or something, and then another town that was like, I don't know, like 80 people maybe, hardly even a town. And as a result, pretty much any city that's larger than like 50,000 people feels kind of like a big city to me. I guess it's not really. But if it's got like an interstate running through it, or like multiple state highways and lots of exits and shit like that, I don't know. There's a few criteria. It's hard for me to fucking put my finger on it exactly, but I know it when I see it. I tell you what it is. If I can get. But you know what? I just realized this is not a good metric. I just realized my best metric for determining what is a small town would, or what is not a small town, would actually include a town that I would definitely want to exclude from the definition. So I can't do that. Fuck. Well, I guess I'll tell you what the definition was going to be anyway. I was going to say, if I can get Chinese food, Mexican food, McDonald's, and like traditional American diner fare, all in that all in one town, then it is not a small town. But then I realized that would include Nowheresville, Missouri. Because Nowheresville has a Mexican restaurant that's pretty bomb, a Chinese restaurant, well, maybe. I think they're still open. Um, but they had a really good diner and a McDonald's. Now I hear they got a pizzeria. Yes, that's true, Margot. Vietnam does have state organization, but workers have stake in the co-ops and companies they work for. We're definitely mid-sized. Our tallest buildings is eight-floor tall dorms on campus. We did the suburban growing out instead of up. Oh, yes. So you're like an overgrown suburb of Topeka and fucking Kansas City. Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, that's fine. It makes sense. Um, Still, that's large enough to where it makes sense that you would have a pretty large homeless population compared to the rest of Kansas, or a tinier, smaller town. Um, Ultimately, when you're like in an environment like that, I feel like it is really important to keep in mind that you are experiencing the outcome of a system that concentrates people in these places and then typically does not allow these places to provide them with enough services. And you are also witnessing the failure of a system that's not really that well equipped to deal with the problem, because we still, as of yet, we really don't know that much about homelessness as a phenomenon. And it sounds fucking ridiculous to say, like, but that in itself is kind of like a cultural bias that we need to get over if we ever want to really understand the problem. We're learning more all the time, like we are about any topic, but it's one of those things that's just not that well understood or well studied by modern anthropologists, who are, reasonably and understandably so, usually more interested in the evolution of earlier hominid species than they are, or the evolution of Homo sapiens in its earlier days, than they are in the modern problems that face human beings as they're living right now. Um, but really, I think that we need a lot of study in the area of like what makes people stay in these cycles of homelessness. For sure, our homeless population has outgrown our city's ability or willingness to provide or to proportionally fund our services. Exactly. Yeah, so it's gotten to a point, and this point happens out west too, and it happens with pretty much any city that does provide some limited services for homeless people. It eventually gets to a point where the bureaucrats start making this fucking sick political calculus in the boardrooms and the smoky bars where they make their decisions. And they decide, well, we're not going to expand these programs. We're not going to expand this funding, because if we do that, then it's just going to grow the homeless population even more, because they basically look at it as a Malthusian paradox, um, where an increase in ability to provide results in an exponential increase in population, but like it's not really, I don't think that it is a genuine issue of Malthusian runaway, because there is a finite number of homeless people that are ever going to come across that town. There's a finite number of homeless people in Kansas. There's a finite number of homeless people in the surrounding states: Colorado, Oklahoma, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska. People can eat just fine, but our accessible mental health slash medical services and housing services are boned. Also, our rents are super inflated because of the college. Our rent, accessible mental health slash medical services and housing. Well, yeah, honestly, the mental health services and medical services thing is a huge one, and that would honestly just be resolved so easily with universal health care. But the housing thing, that is this. I don't know how to put it. It's like a sleeper problem. I really do not know how to word it. It's one of these things that we don't talk about it a lot when we talk about homelessness. Just like we don't talk about the people who might just have a drive to live nomadically or whatever. We also don't talk about the fact that just the sheer fucking cost of housing is driving more and more people towards homelessness. And there are already people who are living lives that are of functional homelessness that just aren't counted in the homelessness statistics, because, well, they've got four walls and a roof where they're allowed to be, and they're receiving mail there. But like the reality of their life is that they're living on a couch, and it's like there's six people splitting three bedrooms, and you're like the seventh person that has to take the couch because everybody else has two people to a room. And that person living on the couch is counted as like an employed fucking person living in a residence and everything, not a person who is basically fucking homeless. Because, I mean, you're functionally, but we don't want to count that because that broadens the statistics to such a degree that people are uncomfortable with it. having roommates is the meta here. I could scrape by in a 1-bedroom place, but it gets way more affordable the more roommates you have. Yeah, of course. But it's also a tricky thing, right? Because where where does a roommate go from being a roommate to um like, I don't know, man. I just feel like we really need better language and better rhetoric to talk about the issue of severe, crushing poverty in this country. Because there are people living lives of utter deprivation and depravity that I don't like. How are you going to improve their lives unless you identify that as like a problem area? But it's so hard to codify that into a problem. Like, at what point does a roommate become someone that is basically just getting by the very skin of their teeth, who would definitely become homeless very, very, very quickly with no recourse whatsoever if anything changed with their housing situation? I mean, there is a word to describe those people. I think they're called housing unstable. I think it's called like housing instability or whatever. And that's like an even bigger problem than homelessness, if for no other reason than because it also includes homeless people in there. Um, but it also includes like so many other people. It's a real fucking thing that we're not dealing with in this country in any kind of massive organized way. We're pretty much just letting private equity rape this country to death. And like private equity, corporations, and private landlords. We're basically just letting them rape this country to death with exorbitantly high rents and, never lowering property values. For sure, I worry about when my parents pass away and I no longer have any sort of safety net. The only reason I can make a 1-bedroom work is because I have a union job with wages to endure city's cost of living. Well, yeah, exactly. If it weren't for that, you'd be, hard up, just like any regular working class person is. And that's the fucking sword of Damocles that hangs over all of our heads. It's what keeps us going to work. It's what makes us put in job applications when what we are doing for a living stops working out. Like, that's ultimately that driving thing that defines like the working class and its like class relationship between working class and bourgeoisie. Ultimately, it is that we have to labor in some way and produce something for that storied upper class. It's one of the reasons why I want to build up this property so bad. And honestly, like the more I think about it, the more I think, if I'm if I'm ever able to save up the money, I think genuinely what I want to do is save up enough money to find like 10 other like-minded people, 10 to 15 other like-minded people, and set up a community land trust that buys like 25 or 30 acres in Missouri, 25 to 30 arable acres, preferably, um, where I can have some kind of like fallback plan for if this stops working out, for if whatever I'm doing stops working out. Something that is, like, listen, I don't believe in the myth of self-reliance. Don't get me wrong. This project would have to have inputs from the outside and outputs to the outside. It would have to feature both if it were to succeed, in a world that requires these things, basically, as a function of its survival. So I have no illusions about the myth of self-reliance. But I would like to live in such a way as to where if those outside inputs suddenly became unavailable for like a year or like a month or whatever, I'd be fine. I know a lot of that's kind of just illusionary. I know a lot of that's just illusionary because it's like, well, society breaks down, you know? Like, people are just gonna come for the people like you that have all the fucking shit. And it's like, well, whatever, man. At least I'll live a little longer than the fucking people who die raiding the Walmart. Ow. How do we feel about the onset of AI based unemployment? Um, I think it's one of the worst man-made disasters that is still yet preventable. There's lots of man-made disasters that could be the worst, but that, it's one of them. It's definitely one of them. Um, it's still preventable. We could institute safeguards that make sure that people retain their jobs or retain some kind of path towards new forms of employment, but it doesn't appear like the billionaire class has really any interest in implementing any of that, nor the politicians. So it seems very likely that indeed AI based, you know, unemployment is probably coming to a city near you. And without a UBI or a food stipend or guaranteed housing or anything like that, it is going to be a massive crisis in which tons of people in a first world country, namely America, starve right the fuck to death. Not even kidding. There will be mass graves before all is said and done. And before the people rise up as well. And it makes me so angry because of course terminal corporate cost cutting would absolutely deep throat replacing people with LMs. Corporate choices are so frustratingly predictable and unintelligent. Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. Listen, these fucking tech companies are literally looking to replace people that do your job exactly. Not just your job, but like there's all kinds of jobs that when you hear these fucking techno feudalists talk about it, um, it reveals how like what directions they want to take it. And honestly, like in a perfect world, like in a perfect world, maybe a human bus driver would be more of a backup to take over if anything should fuck up, Or maybe the human should drive it fucking full time and then the AI should just take over if they happen to get incapacitated or something. Or maybe it could help provide them with, better awareness tools and shit like that. There's lots of ways that this technology could be incorporated without depriving people of their humanity or their employment. But it's not being developed with that in mind. It's being developed to replace these sorts of jobs completely. And the way they talk about it, they talk about how jobs like factory worker, bus driver, taxi. There's all these human jobs that are repetitive, follow predictable routes and predictable workflows that, in theory, could be automated with a sufficiently complex automative model. And, you, like, it almost makes sense to think, oh, buses, but, like, honestly, I personally think that we should be trying to build a world that um, is more human, not less. So I think that these tools might be useful for helping people in their situational awareness, taking over if someone should be incapacitated, providing a lockout if someone should steal a bus or something like that. I think that there could definitely be good applications of this tech, but the direction it's going, not good. And yeah, they look at it like, oh well, these buses, they run on a grid, they have these same routes that they follow. Um, you can incorporate sensors to tell when people are getting on and off, and use cameras and everything else, as well as having like these human backups operating remotely to make sure that everything's going according to plan. Oh, but yeah, it's fucked. A computer would need to handle all traffic interactions. We don't have the ability to do it. AI drivers is not going to happen. A computer would need to handle all traffic interactions. We don't have the ability to do it. I mean, we do though. We do though. There are already like these Waymo cars and shit. Now they glitch out sometimes and fuck up, but for the most part they seem to be somewhat operational. They're, like I said, they glitch out quite a bit and do shit they're not supposed to, but they also work correctly more often than they glitch out, which makes me think that we are not far away from a world in which there could be fully automated driverless cars and driverless taxis as an extension, like by extension. Driverless buses are not far behind that, because at that point, once you develop the model, like once you have figured out a model that is good at learning these patterns and is good at applying them and um, learning from them and everything, you just need to fucking start training that model on human bus drivers that are well qualified and everything for a certain amount of time, and then you've got it. By the way, me talking about the technical process by which this stuff happens is not a moral endorsement of this behavior or this technology. I'm just telling you how it fucking works. Okay, I'm not saying it's right that this is how it is done, but I've read up quite a bit on how it works, and this is how it works. I'm gonna switch over to regular mic because I gotta charge the phone. The servers required to handle this concept isn't possible for us to achieve unless quantum computing tech takes off. What makes you think that? I don't know. I feel like you're making human traffic systems out to be a lot more complicated than they actually are. Not only that, but I feel like you're also not thinking about it like a fucking tech billionaire. And I'm trying to think about how this technology will actually be pursued and implemented. These, like, one of the big ideas that is floated is this integrated what is it, integrated traffic technology or something, where basically you've got a computer system. You've already got computer systems that run the traffic lights and traffic signals and cameras and all that type of shit in a city already. all that shit is usually based on some kind of server mesh somewhere in the city, and is internet worked and can be controlled from one central location, right? Not always. Sometimes it's old systems that are self-contained in every intersection, but that's a lot rarer. So it would not be a difficult retrofit with the existing technology to integrate these with Internet of Things technology, basically. And once you've got it integrated with that, you could build a framework, some kind of like national level framework or something, or very easily adaptable framework. I don't know how you'd want to put it, but basically you could create a framework that would be used to integrate the traffic signals directly into these vehicles. So the vehicles like literally know exactly what they need to do, because like they see a yellow light, for example, digitally before the yellow light ever actually happens, so they can start to account for their position relative to the other cars on the road and stuff. And like when technology is sufficiently advanced, I have no doubt in my mind that with the higher quality cameras that they keep implementing in traffic camera situations, stuff like that, they will eventually have these like AI integrated systems that can dynamically detect traffic loads and maybe even the placement of individual vehicles, and provide a data reference that can be easily interpreted and used by these vehicles. Like, keep in mind, right, that we're talking about we're talking about a digital process that doesn't have to do something that's that complicated. The main reason why driving is complicated for human beings is because it's such a, like there's so many things going on, right? But for a computer, a bunch of data points is what it's designed for. I mean, it's like that's what it's for. It's the whole point of it. And ultimately, the reason why it's so hard for us is math, and doing math on the fly, and being able to consistently do that math on the fly, because so much of driving is just being able to do that math, like knowing how much distance you need when you're braking, knowing exactly how much distance you need for a turn or whatever. You're not doing it consciously. It's not math you're representing as numbers, but that kind of math does exist as objective numbers that can be calculated and sensed by a machine that can operate a lot faster than a human brain can. And a lot of the, so here's how I believe that this technology will work in its final implementation. I think the brains of the actual driving and shit, as far as the braking and accelerating and that kind of stuff, I think the brains that dictate that, the rules of engagement or whatever, I don't know how you'd put it, but the thing that actually makes it do the stuff on the ground would be in the vehicle. It would not need to be up in the cloud or in a server stack somewhere. That would be in the car itself. And the servers would just be managing the inflow of data from all the different fucking sensors and shit that it's got, and interpolating that with the broader mission profile, which would be server based. And that's where you would also create the model that the car's computer would use to plot its, individual actions from minute to minute. Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be remote server farms handling the individual vehicles. What you would have is a computer in every vehicle, like a highly intelligent computer like these Waymos have or something like that does most of the fucking calculations in a box in the vehicle itself, you know? Like most of that work is being done there as far as like the minute to minute driving goes. What's handled by the servers is the, like, what I would call the mission profile, or the, like, digital map, mental map, however you want to phrase it, that informs what the car does more broadly. We don't have the rare earth minerals to do that either. Well, I got news for you. They're gonna try it until they mine every last bit of coltan out of fucking African children's hands. As long as there is a gram of coltan on this planet that can be extracted by a third world child, I can guarantee you there will still be a continued interest in this technology. I don't like it. I don't like that it's that way. But it's that way. And we need to accept that it's that way. And we need to start looking for solutions to make it less harmful that it's that way. Now, personally, my solution to this has always been recycling. Like, I think that as these minerals become rare, you're already starting to see it pop off, but as these minerals get rarer and rarer, dumpster diving, fucking junkyard diving and shit like that is going to become way, 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 way bigger and way more profitable. There are already people in Africa who do this, and there are starting to become communities of people in America who do it. And that's fucking terrifying, but it's also very real as far as, like, what it shows you about the mineral shortage and shit. But ultimately, really, like, we should just be paying people pretty richly already to be sorting through. Like, a big push for our technology right now, if we wanted to be responsible about the development of technology, would be developing reclaiming tech. Basically tech that can go through landfills, fucking shredding up light plastics and sorting out heavier stuff, basically. And then, finding these big electronics and shit and taking them to be processed for every last bit of rare earth mineral that can be stripped from them. I'm gonna lurk. I'm not angry or anything. Just want to get some games in. It's insane we are recycling batteries already. Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, but yeah, no, lurking is fine. You're totally chill, Dan. And I thought it was a good conversation. It's not often that we disagree much, but I think I'm a bit more of a futurist. I think that this technology could be cool if we were being responsible about it. If it weren't being dictated by the billionaire class and everything else, but that's part of the reason why I speak out against it in the way that I do, is because we're not doing it responsibly, right? We're not doing what we should. Fucking disposable vapes, literally throwing recyclable ball. Yeah, and I looked into, by the way, the idea of recycling vapes, and what I learned, it honestly makes me want to do a video about it. I really want to do a video called, like, like the worst garbage on the planet or something. I don't know. I'm sure some YouTube essayist has already done a video like this, but I looked into it, and it's basically impossible to recycle a vape. Effectively. It's effectively impossible to recycle a vape. In theory, there is a facility in the UK that accepts international deliveries that can, but, in order to ship rechargeable batteries internationally, there's all kinds of rules and shit, and it's really expensive. So, basically what I found out is, in order for people in the US to take advantage of the UK's infrastructure, what little infrastructure is starting to exist in the UK for recycling vapes, it would be just like fucking retarded expensive. And they wouldn't have the capacity to take in that much anyway. And in order to start up something like that in the US, it's like kind of insanely expensive to do, because you've got to have a facility that can handle like certain types of toxic waste, because the leftover e-juice and shit isn't safe to just dump in any old landfill. It's got to be processed in a certain way. The plastic from it has to be processed in its own specific way, and there's different types of plastic that are used on them, and all that has to be tested and sorted. The batteries, honestly, can be sent to a battery recycler once they are stripped of all of their, all the things that surround the battery. You can, strip that down to its base components and send the battery off to a battery recycler. But yeah, like, so you basically have to create a facility that does multiple stages of the recycling process itself before sending these bulk materials off as like bulk material for this, that, or the other industry. And it sucks because, like, in a lot of these vapes, there's like a little LCD screen, there's like a little PCB that controls stuff on the inside of it. So, think about how many tons of rare earth mineral get mined up, put into a disposable vape, and then chucked in the ground. It's insane. It's insane. It's insane. I don't think we should ban disposable vapes. I don't think we should ban disposable vapes, but I do think we need to, have a moratorium on their production until recycling facilities are established. And then, honestly, I think that there probably needs to be, penalties for someone who's caught publicly throwing away a vape after there are recycling facilities developed for them. Now, that's also going to require public institutions and certain businesses signing on to keep vape recycling fucking depositories on hand. But I think that it could be a pretty lucrative industry for whatever fucking company figures out how to do it here in America. And it's also just an ecologically necessary thing. I mean, imagine if we do start developing this reclaiming technology that is able to shred up light styrofoam and plastic bags and light cardboard while leaving behind TV remotes and disposable vapes and computers and TVs. If we ever make that tech, we're going to need people who can recycle it. Only answer is that people should be using real mods. If you can't refill it, you might as well just go burn some tires. Oh, that's funny. I really do feel like it's one of those things where you kind of have to shame people and make fun of them for being backwards on it and provide recycling and, you know, like it's a delicate balancing act because you don't want to push people too hard in the opposite direction, dude. You tell a redneck that like you tell a redneck that something like that, like, oh, you might as well just go burn a few tires, you're gonna smoke a disposable vape. That just makes them want to go burn some fucking tires while they smoke a disposable vape. And I hate that they're like that, but I feel like we have to contend with the reality that there are some people like that. And as long as we have to contend with that reality, then I feel like we just need to push people into recycling it and shame them for not recycling them. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get off here, I think. We never did end up doing members only chat. That's because I'm fucking stupid and forgot to do it. But, you know, I was able to get a front from the old plug, so I'm smoked up. And we had a fun night, so later, Phoebes. I'm headed out for the night. Yeah, I'm about to go do them. Something, don't feed the trolls. Conservatives are just trolls in real life. True. Very true. All right, anyway, good night, guys. See you later. Bye.